Point of No Return by Wildheart. Chapter 12. Temp Judgment, Part 3. Trixie had plenty of combat training. After all, even if she was never expected to face actual battle, she needed to learn just in case she might find herself in a bad situation. No training could prepare for the actual thing, however, as she'd never actually been drilled to the point of said training being second nature. So, with a dragon trying the best to skewer her on his short sword, she followed back on pure instinct. It wasn't working very well. The unicorn couldn't get a single spell off, constantly on the defensive. She had no time to concentrate, instead, only able to attempt dodging every strike. Trixie had no weapon of her own, and Spike seemed quite capable of using both sword and shield in tandem. It was a wonder she wasn't dead yet. She already had several lacerations on her forelegs and sides. A slice came at her from the left, and she ducked under it, only for it to flick down. Trixie jerked back, and the tip of the blade cut her snoot, barely leaving a flesh wound, but it was yet another reminder of how terrible she was in close quarters. Spike pressed forward with his shield up, guarding against any possible counterattack as he moved into blade range. Trixie barely had time to recover, let alone think, before he jabbed at her. Luckily, when she rolled, it was to her right, putting her to Spike's shield-bearing side. She happened to be just out of range when the dragon swung said shield in her direction. Finally, she had enough time to gather her thoughts, as she spent those precious seconds well. Her horn glowed, and the smell of ozone filled the air. Spike's scales starting to tingle. Before he could react, a bolt of lightning surged out from Trixie's horn to his shield, blasting it back. The blow had enough force to rip the leather straps from its back, forcing it up into the air. She grated triumph and leapt forward, to press her own attack, but only for her to face or to receive a retaliation in the form of Spike's fists. Tumbling midair from the blow, Trixie landed on her back and let off a deep groan. Her visage swam, and nose felt stopped up and numb. She felt something warm trickling down her face. It rolled over before it got to her eyes instinctively, leaving Spike to shake his wrist out. "Jeez, that's why you never press a punch face." Aside from some singeing on his former shield arm, he looked perfectly fine. Trixie tried to process this as he came closer. Unicorn's mind screaming at her, but that voice felt so far away. Her head was still spinning, even as Spike picked her up by the neck. He drew his fist back again. The last conscious thought she had before it came down on her was, "Oh, right! Dragons are resistant to destructive magic." Spike grimaced as he looked down at the rebel, as he dropped her into an unceremonious heap. He never liked Trixie, and had even less reason to like her these days. "But I don't want to kill her. That's not on me," he thought to himself, mostly to justify his nervousness. He never actually killed any pony, and didn't want to start now. "That's Perfect's job." The dragon looked back at the door, ignoring a groan from the passed-out pony. "Probably not going to get back in there easy." He was right. The door jammed in tight. Oh well, knowing Pinky, she'd probably just get lost and wander around harmlessly before she was caught. No need to worry about her. Trixie was slowly beginning to come back too. The dragon had no idea what to do with her at this point. With an apathetic shrug, he jerked her up again by the tail, and started dragging her toward the front gate. That was when he heard the sound of battle coming from the rear grate. "Oh, for the love of—" "Well, she's just gonna slow me down." He dropped the unicorn, and charged towards the source of the racket, leaving his prisoner behind. Pinky wasn't lost. She knew exactly where she was, and that was right here. It wasn't her fault that right here didn't know where it was. But as long as she knew where she was, Pinky figured she would be fine. She was getting a little worried about right here, however, and was considering asking it where its parents were, or maybe throwing it an "I'm lost" party. When she bumped into a thick iron door, she glared at the offending portal, rubbing her nose with a forehoof and pushing it open. Past the door, it was quite dark. Pinky peered in, barely able to see at all. Pulling her head back, the Earth Pony tried to grab a torch from the wall, only to jerk back with a gasp. The torch's handle itself was very hot, and trying to take it out of its fixture would probably only result in her dropping it. Giving up on that, Pinky stepped into the room, reasoning that she would either find a way out, or at least a way not to be lost. She tested the ground in front of her with her full hose before she actually moved. The unusual caution was brought out by an feeling of unease this place gave her. She couldn't quite place the source. She knew something about the smell bothered her, and the darkness wasn't helping, making her bump into something very cold and made out of metal. With a gasp, Pinky backed up from it and began trembling.
It's okay, Pinky. Nothing to be scared of, right? I'll just sing like usual.
She took in a deep breath and began. Her singing was quiet. She didn't want to attract the attention of whatever might lurk in the choking darkness.
When I was a little filly and the sun was going down.
Her nose bumped into something wet as she jerked back with a cough, metallic scent filling her nostrils. She didn't like that at all, but she hurried into the next verse.
The darkness and the shadows, they would always make me frown.
She wiped away that fluid. It was thick and gooey and cold.
I hide under my pillow from what I thought I saw.
She stepped around that, whatever it was, and as she continued, her hoof bumped into a metal rod on the ground, sent it clattering. Shrieking in surprise, Pinky actually cowered for a moment, hunched down to the ground.
But Granny Pie said that wasn't the way to deal with fears at all.
What is? She stood up again, taking a deep breath and steeling herself against her quaking. The song was making her better, so she tried to convince herself.
She said, Pinky, you gotta learn to stand up tall. Learn to face your fears.
She was cut off as she tripped over something on the ground. Something that rolled with her. It felt like a pony.
Hello?
Getting no response, she continued to lay there for a moment, her breath heavy and quick.
Somebody, please say something.
The earth pony gulped and slowly rose up after another few moments of silence.
Must be a dummy or something. Is it a real pony? That's right, Pinky. It's not real.
It was hard to convince herself after that. The cold fluid was now under her belly from where she tripped on.
You'll see that they can't hurt you. Just laugh and make it clear.
Her heart almost stopped when a light flared up in the room. All around her were horrible machines, all built specifically to hurt ponies in unspeakable ways. Hoof screws, racks, hooks, claws, knives, even the spire. Even though technically the spire shouldn't really work on a pony. Unless you want to... No, don't even want to think about it. The rod she had dripped over was some sort of rotisserie, which had something attached to it. Something red, slimy, and long, like some kind of word.
Oh, Celestia, that's...
You! Pinky couldn't help herself. She leaned forward and retched, vomit splattering on the floor. Half-digested apple chunks joined all but whole cupcakes in the middle of a yellow bile on the stone in front of her, swirling into the cracks between the tiles. Panting a bit, Pinky closed her eyes tightly, giving off a soft whimper as tears started to stream down her cheeks. She didn't want to look back at the dummy she had tricked over, but she found herself doing it so anyway. It was as if her mind was rebelling against her, what she thought made her nausea much, much worse. She didn't listen. The dummy was, of course, a real pony. A blue stallion with a light-colored mane. Party favor! No! His ribcage had been pulled open, each rib snapped off, and each and every organ carved from his chest and stomach. The empty cavity had been stuffed with candy, all stained by blood and worse. Two dead eyes met Pinky, as he found her breath ceasing as a fly crawled over one of them. The expression of the stallion froze her into a look of absolute horror and agony. Thread led to the side, as well as the needle. Her hose gave almost out from under her. It was a miracle she kept standing. After a few more drive heaves, she looked back up and froze when she was staring into the face of another pony. One with a wicked, wild grin. Pinky leaned back as the dark pink Pegasus drew closer and mockingly finished the song for her.
Ha! Ha! Ha!
The air pony screamed and darted for the floor, but it slammed shut before she reached it with a loud note of finality. The Pegasus approached, grinning still. That smile much wider than any pony could possibly smile. In fact, it literally reached from ear to ear. 2 rows of razor-pointed teeth gleaming in the light of a chandelier, which had a skeleton hanging from it, swinging slowly.
Hi there! You must be Pinkie Pie! I heard you like partying and that you were here earlier, so I started making a party for you! But Spike wouldn't let me take you to it.
She huffed, took on a pout.
What a meanie. So, I thought to myself, Pinkie has to come back, right? So, when she does, I'll have an even better party ready. With a piñata! Do you like it? You got here early, so I didn't finish sewing it up. Oh well, guess we gotta play with this one.
Pinkie pressed up against the door, hyperventilating and eyes darting around, looking for a way out.
Ooh! Better idea. I'll use you as a piñata!
Well, I always thought that Pinkie Pie was cute, sweet, sugary, and had a whole bunch of good things inside her for all the little foals, but not like this! The depraved Pegasus suddenly pounced, and Pinkie jumped to the side. It was a better decision than even suspected, as 2 spiked bones jutted out from Perfect's hooves, puncturing through the door.
Hey! Stay still.
She jerked about for some effort as Pinkie ran away, bobbing and weaving from torture device to torture device, eventually managing to hide herself. Perfect let out a frustrated sigh. Pinkie could hear her hoofs on the stone floor, echoing through the chamber. The echoes made it impossible to tell where they were coming from, and the Earth Pony could only try to quiet her sobbing, with very little success. Not really registering what she was doing, Pinkie grabbed a cleaver from a nearby table. She couldn't see herself using it, but it felt comforting to have something to cling on to. And cling she did. She held the knife to her chest, as if it were a Teddy Ursa. It bit her lips so hard they bled to keep the noise of her sobs from getting out. A slight shift of the table she hid behind made her dart forward just as another spike came down, this one jutting from Perfect swing.
Found ya! Oh, come on. Stop running. You're ruining the party.
The Pegasus gave chase, and Pinkie was so very glad that all the devices strewn about and the relatively low ceiling kept Perfect from flying. Pinkie took a running leap over an alicorn-sized upright coffin, landing on the other side of it with a roll. With a glance behind her, she took in the most disturbing thing she'd ever seen. Perfect's body was deformed into a flatter shape, squeezing itself between that coffin and a furnace with a loud slurping sound. Sweet baby Celestia and little Luna, what is this thing?
No, get away from me!
She brandished the knife with her teeth, the Earth Pony's legs shaking from adrenaline. Perfect just laughed and grabbed a wing, sticking out, bones smacking the blade, jarring it against Pinkie's teeth. Surprised by the sudden pain, she dropped it to the floor and barely reacted before a perfect cut pounced and pinned her to a table with bases on the other side, seemingly meant for dissection. It had been used recently, blood filling the basins. The pounce knocked the wind out of Pinkie, making her groan and go limp. She closed her eyes tight, expecting to be skewered at any second. When she wasn't run through for a few seconds, the Earth Pony opened her eyes to see a contemplative Perfect. The Pegasus noticed Pinkie's confused look and giggled.
Oh, sorry. Just wondering what to do for you. I have you on a surgery table, but I wanted to make you a piñata. But then when I was squeezing past the furnace, I was thinking, why don't I stab you with a red-hot pole a few times first? But that's not very creative. So...
She kept jabbering, the Earth Pony feeling more and more sick by the second. Fear gave way to anger. Anger over how casually her assailant could be about these horrible things. While Perfect was distracted, Pinkie yelled out, raising her hind legs and giving the Pegasus a solid buck. Pinkie wanted to hurt her, to be sure, but mainly she wanted the psychotic pony away from her, and Pinkie let her anger overwhelm her kindness, and with another cry, tackled Perfect as hard as she could. Pegasus grunted as she was forced back onto her hind hooves from the impact, and began to trip backwards. A high hoof struck a pressure plate, and the coffin behind her swung open, revealing a small chamber filled with jagged spikes. Pinky cried out in alarm and streaked the hoof out, but it was too late. The iron mirror slammed shut upon Perfect, and her almost victim lost in shock. Blood seeped out from some holes in a few seconds later.
Actually, the Iron Maiden's never been meant to kill anybody. It's actually meant as a torture device.
Pinky took a step back, horrified by what just happened.
No, 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 oh, Celestia, I didn't mean to kill her!
Before she could get too deep into her self-loathing, however, a chuckle started up from the coffin, making her freeze from her tracks.
Is she still alive?
Pinky rushed to it and tried to pry the device open. Laughter was getting louder, more maniacal, more insane, even as the pink mare exerted herself. Soon, the laughter grew too loud, and the utter madness forced Pinky to turn and run. Reaching the iron door, she ripped it open and darted out. Only when the door slammed shut behind her did the cackling end. Applejack leapt over the fallen tree trunk, vines snaking after her. She had to divert her path from its original beeline towards Wildheart, as the Earth Pony had been surrounding himself with these vines. Getting caught by them was not a prospect she savored. Her group was still frantically trying to fend off the plants assaulting them, kept firmly on the defensive. Applejack's hooves hit the ground again as she jerked to the right, ducking under a swinging tree branch. Wildheart ain't the brass candle of the bunch, she thought as she kept pace with those vines. So long as I don't look like I'm coming right for him, probably won't notice. That's gotta make sure I don't tire myself out in the process. She didn't try to outrun the vines. Keeping them at tail's length was enough. Just as she thought, Wildheart barely noticed her for now, more concentrated on attempting to wipe out her battle group, which was proving annoyingly hard. The rebel groups had been able to clear a small area of trees and undergrowth via magic, and had formed a circle inside of it to see its assaults from all directions. A mere second of respite allowed an archer to notch and loose an arrow in the giant's direction. He clearly jerked it up his left forehoof, the arrow burying itself in the earth where it had been. When the hoof was lifted away, all the plants suddenly stopped. Giving off a growl of frustration, Wildheart stomped down the arrow, snapping its shaft, and the floor pressed the attack once more. That hadn't escaped Applejack, as he doubled around to the Earth Pony's backside. Why did it stop? Taking it behind herself, she confirmed that the vines pursuing her had fought to the ground, were just now back on her tail. Getting an idea, she grinned and surged forward, putting all her might behind her pounding hooves. Wildheart jerked his head back toward her, but it was too late. The much smaller Earth Pony tackled Wildheart with everything she had, headbutting his side. With a wheezing grunt, Wildheart rolled under her, and Applejack's momentum carried her over him into the other side. As soon as even one of his hooves left the dirt, his plans all ceased a moment. I got you now! She skidded, hindquarters sliding in a half circle when she landed, was left her facing him again. Queen Nyx's lieutenant barely had enough time to scrabble back to his hooves before Applejack was on him again. This time, she didn't nearly have the same force behind her attack, and he leaned towards it, bracing himself. He skidded a few feet, but ultimately didn't fall over again. Horse apples! Applejack had no time to react before vines wrapped around her torso, forcing her legs to butter by. No, I believe I have you at my mercy. He smirked, and those vines began to squeeze as the stallion stepped over her, a hoof pinning her torso to the ground. It was the mare's turn to wheeze as the pressure forced air out of her lungs. She struggled, giving it her all, but Applejack had no leverage with to break free. The creaking of her ribs made her ears lay flat, her mouth desperately trying to suck in air, which couldn't reach her lungs. I see no reason to take you alive. Perfect will simply have to deal with not being able to have her fun with you. Applejack's lungs were burning. A dull, throbbing pain in her chest told her ribs wouldn't be lasting much longer. Wildheart was taking a sick joy of having his old friend rival in his gasp, and to the exclusion of everybody else, his ear twitched as it picked up a thunderous din. He lifted his head with a brow raised to see a charge of ponies, almost 100 strong, coming straight for him, his eyes wide, and a momentary distraction loosened his fine grip on Applejack. A deep gasp filled her burning lungs again, and through her coughing, she took the opportunity to wiggle her hind legs free. Meanwhile, Wildheart used every bit of the talent Queen Nyx had enhanced with her dark magics, raised a wall of woven trees in the path of the advance, stopping him dead in their tracks. Oh, so Queen Nyx turned him into a freaking plant user. I just thought he trained in the Hidden Leaf Village. He smirked at the multiple thuds onto the wood, while groaning but holding. Despite that theory, he was panting and certain. Took just about everything he had, but you don't need that much to face me off. She grinned, pulled her hind legs back as far as she could. But he ain't getting the chance. Hey! Wildheart! He looked down, the fight squeezing down again. Oh, I haven't forgotten you, Rebel. Oh, yes, the crushing. Applejack smirked, wheezing out. Something's getting crushed. All right! As he lashed out with her hind hooves. In Ponyville, the clock tower rung to 2 at the afternoon. The population, unsuspecting of the battle at the palace and around their small town, were set out to business. Clock chimed a second time, just as a unicorn cracked open some walnuts. For some reason,
Every stallion in town winced as the pain struck them between their legs, wondering where that feeling could have come from. But ultimately, they disregarded the occurrence and went about their business.
oh! Wildheart froze for a moment. His vines loosened up completely, and Applejack slid out from under them, just in time to see the giant fall. With a loud thud, the earth pony hit the ground, sending some dirt up into the air. He curled up a bit, quivering, and with a pathetic whimper, I hope he wasn't planning on having children anytime soon. The mare stood up, grabbed her hat in her teeth, and flipped it onto her head. So do you, Farmit? All right, mares and genticles, let's move it on out! Every stallion in her command complied immediately. They rode out, leading the lieutenant to suffer in peace. The lieutenant's suffering? What about the raider? Ow! Sweet Celestia, ow! All we want is to send you home! A streak of flame drew closer to a rainbow, and the two clasped in a flash of multicolored light, predominantly red. Spitfire's goggles fell away from the impact. It dashed spun midair, recovering quickly enough to slip away from her fallen idol's deadly contrail. Dash's speed against Spitfire's pure agility made the two evenly massed. But you have to be difficult about it! If my best sis couldn't get me to abandon my friends, what makes you think you could? They flew away from each other, coming back for another pass. Rainbow Dash's coat was a bit since, but she could tell Spitfire felt that impact more than she did. This time, the older Pegasus split away at the last second, causing Dash to have to dive to get away from the intense flames trailing behind Spitfire. That fiery contrail of hers set most of the tower ablaze, and a loud groan signaled that its structure was weakening. I gotta finish this quick, before either I get roast, or crushed, then roast. I was hoping you have a brain in your head. Spitfire gave off a growl as he passed by a beam, giving it a good kick to listen. Dash hit the floor, pushed off to launch herself forward and restart her momentum. However, the former Wonderbolt dialed in front of her, forcing her to stop dead as the sound of a large crack fall out, and that beam falling downwards. Dash grunted as it struck her, and slammed her to the tower's floor, cracking and paneling. Spitfire landed in front of her, panting just enough to be noticeable. You know, Dash, let me tell you a little secret. Younger Pegasus struggled to get out from under the beam, making progress before a hoof was brought down onto her back. Roughly enough to knock the air out of her, but not enough to break anything. Dash, I had a lot of respect for you, you know that? You were a good kid, fast flyer, even better, a good leader, which I honestly didn't think you had it in you. Dash glowered up at Spitfire, trying to suck in more air to her lungs. But you want to know the honest truth? The real reason why you were never accepted in the Wonderbolts, kid? Rainbow fluttered her wings as they got free, a bit uselessly though, Dash had been completely focused on Spitfire this entire battle of theirs. Couldn't help but notice her main weakness. She's got experience on you, Dash, sure. But she's old. She's an old mare. And all you need to do is keep fighting and you can't lose. She'll run out of juice long before you will. So get up and fight! Try as hard as she could, though. Spitfire had the leverage of that beam, and her entire body to keep Dash on the floor. No matter how hard she tried, the pinned pony couldn't wiggle free. I'll bite. Tell me why I wasn't good enough for a lousy traitor! Spitfire grit her teeth together, ignoring the crowds behind her, as burning chunks of the ceiling rained down from the floor. The impact smashed the crater into it and kicked up a cloud of dust. That's why, kid. That's why. You can't think 5 minutes ahead. For you, it's all now, now, now. Spitfire didn't know why she was getting so angry. After all, why would she let this punk's kid's words get to her? Nonetheless, she yelled out her next words. You don't have a brain! Or at least, you never used it. I didn't run off to Nightmare Moon as soon as I could because I was some kind of opportunistic coward. She stopped again, bringing up a gasp from her opponent. But that gave Dash an idea, as the beam shifted and slid a little lower. She started shifting her weight, gradually, as much as the beam's own heft would allow, toward the part of it slanted upwards. Maybe using my head's got something to it after all. She fought down a grin. She needed to keep Spitfire angry, so she didn't notice this. Oh, sure. I bet you did because you thought she'd give you a free Celestia damn puppy, right? She sneered, praying to whatever deity that was listening that her next taunt would have the impact she wanted. Or were you jumping at the chance to kill some upstart that was looking to replace a run-down, rickety, old nag? Oh, have the effect she wanted it did. Spitfire roared and reared up, kicking her forelegs and readying herself to slam down both. Now she wanted to hurt Dash. But the younger Pegasus was having none of that. Swinging both her powerful wings up, Rainbow Dash smashed them up against Spitfire's cheeks from either side. It wasn't quite as hard as she wanted, and a lesser pony would have been caught down from that. But Spitfire received a glancing blow from the wings when one of her forelegs caught on them. She was merely knocked aside, and that was all Dash needed. She scooted out from under the beam and swung her body around on its side before kicking with both hind legs. Unfortunately, Spitfire didn't stay off balance for long. Older Mare ducked to the side from the kick and seized Dash's tail in its mouth. Swinging her 180 degrees before letting her loose, Spitfire watched as the Cyan Pegasus hit a wall that almost matched her colors. Were it not for the flame's angry red glow coming from it, the fire had become a raging inferno. But Spitfire didn't care at all. She stalked towards the groaning Pegasus and raised a hoof to bring down her head. She hesitated when Dash said one word. One simple word that made the anger fly around as easily as it came. Why? The question was sincere, not a trick. Dash stared up at Spitfire, eyes red, almost begging. The older mare stuttered, losing her scowl, now struggling not just to cry. That look was the look of a failed fan, desperate to know how their idol had fallen so far. The other Wonderbolts were talking about joining a rebellion. I couldn't let them do that, so they would have gotten killed. She couldn't stop the tears now. For goodness fucking sakes, Rainbow Dash. Do you know how long I've fought with some of them? How long we were friends? The host slammed down finally, but in front of Dash, not on her. I joined because they were scared of my indecisiveness, because they needed something firm to believe in. So I gave them that. I made my choice. She stared down at Dash, eyes filled with a lack of surety that betrayed her tone. The right choice. The older mare flapped her wings a bit, stepping back. She was ready to charge again if her opponent moved. Dash didn't. What happened to you was an accident. I lost my temper. I wanted to teach you a lesson for being so high and mighty. I didn't want to kill you. I never want to kill any pony, but I swear, if I have to, I'll kill you again. Right here, right now. So my friends will be safe and secure. She stared right into Dash's eyes. a glare of grim certainty meeting a sad but equally determined expression. Can you even possibly understand that? Rainbow Dash took a deep breath, trying not to choke on the heavy scent of charred wood and metal. Yeah, I can. She closed her eyes and without any warning dove for Spitfire. If you people want to play loyalty, I think now's the time. Even after her experience, the old Pegasus wasn't expecting a lunge from a prone precision, especially not one so fast and vicious. Before she knew it, the element of loyalty had her pinned to the ground, and struck out a hoof which cut her right in the cheek. Yes, I can! Rainbow Dash growled out, struck again. I'm the fucking element of loyalty, and I'm not about to let you! Another smack punctuated the statement. Nightmare Moon! Smack! Or any pony ever! Crack! Kill! Spitfire groaned as she raised up her forehoof, trying to block the blows. My! It wasn't enough. Franz! The crack sounded out this time was a little too hard. Dash jerked froze as he saw rubble coming towards them. Time seemed to freeze as both mares looked up. There would be no time to disengage. No chance for scrambling would get them away from it. Only one of them could possibly survive. And that was Dash. She didn't want to see her ex-fan die again. Spitfire made the call. Got what it takes, kid. She then bucked as hard as she could with her hind legs. Dash was thrown clear and hit the floor sliding as a thunderous crash rang out from where she had been pinning the older mare previously. The once aspiring Wonderbolt stared at the pile of burning wreckage for a moment, then hung her head. After a moment, she straightened up. She didn't have time to let her emotions get the better of her again. She needed to be calm, collected. Her friends needed her to be like Spitfire. She turned to leave when a glint caught her eye. Pegasus hesitated and scooped him up. The goggles that had belonged to the Wonderbolt's leader were amazingly undamaged, aside from the wear and tear they'd been through so many years of use. Yeah. Rainbow Dash put them on slowly. It felt right somehow. Yes, I do. With that, she spread her wings and flew out of the tower. She didn't look back when it collapsed a few moments later. See? Spitfire even dies, just like in The Night Never Ended. The sounds of battle only intensified outside. As Applejack and Rarity led their battle groups to the back of an unsuspecting army, attempting to get to the rear gate. Twilight dashed down the hallway, panting as a filly clung to her back. She was searching for the Queen, and so far, all the safe places she checked were empty. How could I have been so cruel? A little voice inside her told her Nyx deserved it, that she was being a monster. Twilight had to admit that was true. But a mother shouldn't act like that, even if it is true. She had one place left to check, and prayed it wasn't where. Twilight Sparkle burst into the throne room, and regarded the Queen with a falling heart. Her Majesty was holding herself high, in full armor, staring down at the barred doors that were between her and the rebels. The last bastion she had. She was alone, having sent her last guards away to fight for her. Waiting for what she knew was on the end for her. Nyx! Don't do this! The Unicorn turned her head slowly towards Twilight. Unicorn had expected a frightful greeting, or at least a hateful grimace. Instead, she only saw the haughty, proud expression of Nightmare Moon. Twilight Sparkle. She had to wince at that. The acknowledgement of her as Twilight, and not Mother, spoke more about how Queen Nyx felt any rebuke. You should not be here. Leave me to my end. Her head simply turned back to the door, her unblinking gaze upon it. Twilight slid in front of the throne, putting the younger Nyx on the floor. The filly stared up sadly at the larger Alicorn, who refused to even glance her way. Nyx, please, you have to listen to me. You don't have to do this. It doesn't have to be this way. Just surrender. No! There wasn't any arrogance behind that. She knew she had no chance at this point. No creature, no matter how mighty, could stand against the elements of harmony. But her pride would not let her surrender. Oh, no creature could stand against the elements of harmony. Hey, try telling Mike that. Hello! Nyx, please! I'm sorry for what I was said. I was just upset and... She stopped dead as the Queen fixed a dreadful glare on her, a shiver running down the unicorn's spine. You meant every word, and it was true. I fully admit, but I will not admit to doing not wrong. She spread her wings out, looked up to the ceiling, the mural of her victory over sun and moon painted on it. Everything I have done since I began my reign, I have done for the ponies of Equestria. She closed her eyes, forcing down a shiver. She refused to show her fear. You claim I have gone too far in that. She lowered her head and folded her wings back to her side. Perhaps, but she opened her eyes, once more locked on the throne room's entrance. Was it necessary? I believe so. And I always will. A silence filled the hall as Twilight struggled to find some way to put the news he meant to deliver. She was so sure a few moments ago that only Queen Nyx knew about the truth about Nightmare Moon. It'll be all right. Now, she didn't think it mattered. The dark ruler of Equestria finally turned her eyes to her counterpart, who stood in a fit of fear, stepping back. Do you fear me, fool? She smirked, head held high. Good. Take a look at me. See my might, my pride. This is what you might have been, child. This is what you gave up for the sake of formless loneliness. I have crushed mountains. I ruled the night mercilessly, yet justly. I have brought the world under my hooves. Her wings spread out again, mane and tail flaring up. I am the one this very war is fought over. She stamped a hoof, and the throne cracked where she struck. The Alicorn letting out a proud yet empty laugh. I, and I alone, had the power to do this, to be this. I alone dared. The air around her swirled into her mane. The room darkened, all light being muffled by the power of the dark Alicorn. Look upon me and despair at my glory. You, who may have had the world in her hooves, see how I became conqueror, ruler. Her voice softened, mane and tail retracted, and she settled down in her tone once more. A mother. Her glance returned, as it had so many times before, to the gate. Remember it well, for these are my last words. Before I go into the battle that shall end me, my defeat shall be as glorious as my victory. Once more, quiet reigned, heavy and oppressive. Twilight lowered her head, closing her eyes. This queen was no longer anything resembling her daughter, just a creature of hatred and spite Nightmare Moon had been. She could only wait for her friends to arrive, to put an end to this. But sometimes, a fool knows more wisdom. You talk big, but you're scared. Just too proud to admit it. The sun voice stabbed both Twilight and Nightmare Moon's shocked faces to the source. The Alicorn filly stared up at the adult version of herself, shaking her head. The larger Alicorn growled out and stamped a hoof once more. Be silent, fool! No! You be quiet! Twilight had the face hoof, and how childish that sounded. But Queen Nyx seemed too shocked by the audacity to respond. The little Nyx took that as her cue to continue. Nobody's going to remember this. They're coming to beat up a tyrant, and that's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to remember. A tyrant! Some ponies might like you, sure, but that's a pretty small number. Nyx stabbed a hoof at the Queen on her broken throne. All that talk about being concerned is just a heap of horse apples. Twilight would definitely have a talk about use of that word later, but right now, she didn't want to break the role Nyx was on. It was giving her hope. I should know. Like you said, I'm what you could have been, but I'm not! You want to know why? Nightmare Moon tried to sputter out a response, but she felt so on the defensive. Being faced with oneself is always the hardest foe to conquer. Because you were too weak. Wrong! I'm stronger than you'll ever be, and I'm just a fool. I know I could break the mold. I didn't have to be this way if I didn't want, so I didn't. It was hard, sure, but it was the right thing to do. It wasn't the easy way out you took. The filly huffed. It turned her nose in the air. A little Trixie learned from Diamond Tiara's disdain of practically every pony. And all that dumb talk about glory? Please, what glory? You're sitting on a big chair you just broke because you threw a tantrum. You're not glorious.
You're all alone, scared, and trying to convince yourself and two other ponies that you're all big and scary. You never ruled anything but Ponyville. Isn't that why you were going to be so mean? You never had any control over everything. The only things you crushed were sandcastles and houses of ponies too small to stand up to you.
She growled and hopped up on the throne. Twilight reached out in alarm to stop her, but rather than lash out at the bold little filly, Nightmare Moon pressed against the back of her throne, eyes wide.
This war isn't being fought over you. It's about the ponies of Equestria and how scared and defenseless they are because of you. You are just a big bully who wanted to do everything what you wanted. But that's it. Just a bigger version of Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon.
Nyx delivered a coup de grace.
But you know what? You're right. You're a mama now. Adasia seems really happy and nice. She really loves her mama. Just like I love mine.
Little Nyx looked back to Twilight, then up at Nightmare Moon. Her judging glare the worst criticism the Alicorn had ever received.
But if you're such a good mother, why are you here, all ready to throw your life away, without even a single thought for how scared she is of losing her mother? You poor thing. What did you dream about?
At that, the innocent lieutenant jumped into bed and squeezed herself close to the Alicorn's flank, shuddering. Queen Nyx finished adjusting Adasia's ascent for her, with her tail gently wrapped around the foal.
I dreamed you were undefeated, and you loved forever.
The filly buried her face into the Dark Queen's side. Amaric smiled just as Adasia cried.
It was a silly dream, Adasia. I'm not going anywhere. My rule is as eternal as my night. I will never leave you. Ever.
Queen Nyx lowered her muzzle and gently nudged the filly over into a pillow. Her dark magic suspended a blanket over the small unicorn, covering her up and tugging it gently around her.
I will make your dreams turn so unpleasant again tonight. Sleep well.
The filly yawned, closing her eyes. A happy smile graced her muzzle as she nuzzled into the blanket and pillow.
Good night. Good night, my beloved daughter.
I promise. I'll take you to see your sisters, Sonata and Arya, later. No! These siren jokes are not going to get old, and they are not going to stop! That was the final strike necessary. Nightmare Moon hung her head, tears forming her eyes, pouring down her cheeks. For a moment, all she could do was cry in shame, release more sobs of the fear and death she had been holding back. The filly looked up at her eyes, pity floating in them. Twilight moved forward to hug the Alicorn, offer her comfort. However, the older Alicorn jerked herself up, causing Twilight to jump back, seize Nyx in her magic, and pull her back. It was for naught, however, for a moment later, Nightmare Moon's helmet hit the floor with a loud clatter, and rolled in a circle for a moment, before stomping on its side on the ground. It was cracked on the side from the force of impact. Soon, her chest piece was released by her mane as it fell, followed by the rest of her torso's armor, flung to the side by her wings. Woo! Yeah! Take it all off! Although, it's a pony, you wouldn't be seeing anything. Don't look at me!
Oh, Mother, for all that time I mourned your loss, I was ready to abandon my own daughter, and willingly at that.
Twilight approached the now bare Alicorn once more, wrapped her forelegs around what she could of the much larger pony, Nyx following suit.
But I can't be a mother to her. I'll hurt her eventually, as well. I am Nightmare Moon, and I can't help my nature.
Twilight shook her head. That's what I was trying to tell you. She pulled back and smiled, beaming even as the doors to the throne room crashed open.
You don't have to be, just like Nyx. You're not Nightmare Moon. You're just corrupted by her power. All you have to do is reject it. All you have to do is try.
Behind her, the voices rang out. Where's my helmets? I have them here! Hey, where's Trixie?
Ugh, I'm here with a terrible headache. Oh, I used some medicine for that. Not now.
There she is! Twilight gulped, her smile now strained.
We don't have any time. Please,
Just try. Nightmare Moon. Queen Nyx. No, Nyx. Closed her eyes and tried. Last chapter. Epilogue. Absolution. The portal behind Daz and Twilight closed, leaving them in the bright sunlight of home. Hey, was that right? Are we home? Twilight cast a look around, absently grabbing her daughter out of midair with her magic as she answered Daz. I think so. Let's find out. She glanced back to the young Alicorn. As for you, you are not leaving my sight until I'm sure we're in the right place. The filly groaned, but remained on her mother's back, pouting as the two mares tried for Ponyville. It only took a glance to show that the town was as they had left it. No castle of doom looming over it. Rainbow Dash let out a whoop and flitted into the sky, doing a loop as he headed for her cloud home. Twilight, however, kept the celebration to a minimum until she had the chance to re-enter her library. It was promptly pounced by Spike. Twilight! There you are! We were worried. The unicorn irked and how tightly the baby dragon's arms wrapped around her neck. Spike! Can't breathe! Oh, sorry. He let go, then hugged her chest. Twilight smiled and wrapped a foreleg around him in return, laying her neck over his head.
I'm very glad to see you too, Spike.
After a moment, little Nyx spoke up.
Can I get down now, Mom?
Twilight hesitated after a moment, considering.
Well, it could be another world that we vanished from. I might have to run a few tests first.
As the filly protested, Spike grinned, not able to resist. Hey, who's the girl? Twilight gasped, and her eyes went wide.
Oh no! We have the wrong place! We need to get down now and...
She stopped, looking confused when Spike fell over, laughing.
What's so...
Her expression fell as she guided.
Very funny, Spike. Okay, I need to go out for a little while. I'll be back soon. Nyx, you're staying with me. But Mom!
The filly whined, lowering her ears, but brightened up as Twilight set her down on the ground. The mare lowered herself to Nyx's level and smiled.
I just want to make sure you're all right. You can walk along with me if you want, but you are coming with me.
Nyx returned to smile and salute.
Okay, Mama!
Twilight gave a nod to Spike.
I'm really glad to see you again, Spike, but this is very important. Can you keep track of things without me for a little longer?
The baby dragon nodded quickly. Sure, you can count on me. But his grin left him as he thought of a question. But where are you going? Twilight smiled, cheeks a bit red, as her gaze turned back to Spike. She answered just as her host brought her outside the library.
To see Pinky. There's something we need to talk about.
As he led towards Sugar Cube Corner, however, her thoughts turned from her friend to the other Nyx.
I wonder if he's going to be okay out there.
From the desk of the Unicorn Dangling Mare, traveling historian and sometimes resident of Ponyville, written for the benefit of their Royal Highnesses, may their reign last forever, Elements of Harmony, may their judgment never falter, and the equestrian nation as a whole, may its ponies proper. A brief description of the lives and events leading after the Dark Queen's reign. The end of the Dark Queen's reign, as the period was referred to in the decades following, was not a happy, peaceful or rare. No sane, rational pony could have expected to be. Even with the return of the princesses, the economy suffered horribly, and many ponies lost their lives from the sickness and malnutrition before proper supply lines could be established. A few villages and towns refused their supplies outright until Princess Celestia herself distributed them, believing the raising of the sun to be another one of Nightmare Moon's tricks. The event also damaged the reputation of Princess Luna, as some of the ponies believed she was once again responsible for the threat of Eternal Night. Never met the actual mare, the mare by the name of Nyx. I hope to clear the cobwebs of ignorance away and confront this misconception with truth. However, I am getting ahead of myself, and I beg your forgiveness, dear readers, for my rambling once more. First, I shall deal with the piecing together the fragments of history left behind in the wake of that period, in which the population of Equestria were more concerned with survival than penning the events for posterity. While I could not blame them, I yet still grumble on the difficulty of assembling even these meager notes. I thank, of course, the Elements of Harmony for their contributions, for without them, I certainly would have despaired with my efforts. We shall begin with the history of Ponyville, as it was all but the only location in Equestria, aside from Canterlot, not utterly devastated by the Dark Queen's reign. Ponyville took upon itself the duty of assisting other cities and towns not so lucky. despite their many selfless sacrifices to their own prosperity. Ponyville quickly grew into the bustling metropolis we know it to be today. This was mainly not because of its growth in desperate time, but because in the years following, it became the absolute center of the equestrian economy. As for Sweet Apple Acres, well, the very fact that it has now become the largest orchard in all our wondrous kingdom, and its fare considered a national treasure, was so more than I could ever write. Next, the elements of harmony. As the Sun and Twilight Sparkle and Rainbow Dash had been sent back to their own world, there was now need of both a new element of magic and element of loyalty. A pony named Trixie Lulamoon, who was fat, a key member of the rebellion against Nightmare Moon, went on to be the new element of magic, and, though not as powerful as her predecessor, she managed the job quite nicely, at least in the humble opinion of the pony writing these words. As for the element of loyalty, a replacement was found in the most odd of places. One of the soldiers on the field, on the night of the Resistance victory, named the Siege of Night's End, was in critical condition and near death when she was found by the element of kindness. Recognizing the young mare, she prioritized care for her, and was not the least bit wasted effort. When questioned how she could possibly survive such a mortal wound, an arrow punctured through the lung and just barely missed her heart, the arrow not only finding its mark because of the uneven ground. Her only comment was that she couldn't let Sleety down by dying. It should come to no surprise that a pony whose primary motivation for survival was love and loyalty to her fiancé would become the new element of loyalty. Scootaloo, as we all now already know, went on to lead a new team of Wonderbolts in her elder years, and is happily married to Sweetie Belle, sister of the element of generosity. Go Scoots. The element of magic and honesty must be spoken of in the same breath, as they are inseparable. Few knew of their marriage publicly, as the ceremony was brief and a simple event that only their closest friends and family were invited to, and afterwards they retired to Sweet Apple Acres for the rest of their lives, except in the few scattered events of crises in which the elements were required. When interviewed, Applejack stated he had finally fully recovered from Rainbow Dash's death, finding closer in the safety of Equestria. Trixie only had to say that she had no doubt in her mind that the simple farm mare who had become her wife and savior of the worlds would focus on her more strongly. Trixie's arrogance had been noted before, and has not waned, as she claims to be, in her own words, the most powerful unicorn alive, which may now need be true, after Twilight Sparkle's untimely death. Rarity Belle expressed a great deal of grief in her part of supporting the Dark Queen's reign, and nobly abandoned her dream of becoming Equestria's greatest facet designer and member of the noble elite. She traveled from town to town, shelter to shelter, making clothes, blankets, and many other necessary items for the needy ponies whose lives were destroyed by Nightmare Moon's cruelty. However, do not feel saddened by her sacrifice. For all in those selfless acts, she became famous and is forever immortalized as perhaps the sole reason why hundreds, nay thousands of ponies survived to receive proper aid. Appropriately for what she was, she is seen today as an icon, a symbol of the very virtue of generosity. The element of kindness herself, Fluttershy, also retired to Ponyville for a few years, but eventually couldn't bear the growth of a town into a city, leaving with her friend a zebra named Sakura that I am quite familiar with, and yet history has left untouched. Yeah, so have I through most of these stories. I gotta find a good one with Sakura as the main character one day. Fluttershy found a new place in the world, and began a settlement there. While no pony has been able to find its village, it is known from this nearly mythical place as Kindness Respites. Many gifted healers have hailed and all found great success as doctors and nurses to hospitals all over the world. To have lived in this well-hidden village is a sign of itself of greatly envied skill, and though many have tried to falsely claim relation to gain temporary fame, the skills of true denizens of Kindness Respite speak for themselves. We also have a book of Fluttershy, which is kind of like the Book of Jakar, mainly because it seems like when you lose an eye, you get to create your own book. Pygmy Diane Pie, the element of laughter, felt that Equestria simply could not hold her down, and receiving an airship from the Royal Highnesses, set off for parts unknown with a full crew, which had been seemingly drawn from nowhere, which include a swordsman, a sharpshooter, a cook, a navigator, a doctor, an archaeologist, a shipwright, and a musician. She always returned in times of crisis, claiming she already knew what was coming. Aside from that, she was never seen in our fair kingdom again. However, news constantly returned of her exploits. along with trinkets and trophies to prove them. It should be noted that she found love again and remarried, though the name of her husband is lost to history entirely. Cheese sandwich! No doubt, he is completely overshadowed by the legend of his rather chaotic natured wife. For a final note, those who worked willingly with Nightmare Moon were shown mercy for their acts, though were watched closely for suspicion of sedation amongst them. A few rebellions were swiftly put down by the military that was restored from the ranks of Applejack's resistance, and defected members of the Dark Queen's armies nonetheless, like Shiny Armor and Katie. Fletcher was known as a Stallion of Honor, despite his allegiance with Nightmare Moon, and was given the full honorable burial by the newly established military of Equestria. His rangers were spared and formed a border patrol that now watches the edges of our nation tirelessly. They are fearless in battle, and truly a terror to have as an enemy. Their nickname is the Honor Guard. None of Equestria's foes have ever successfully penetrated our lands since their appointment to this duty, save for one failure when one got out. The pony known only as Perfect Cut was never found, despite repeated combings of Midnight Castle's grounds. Blood that must have belonged to her led from her hideous torture chamber to the mines outside the palace, where the trail was lost. While the authorities were very tense by this disappearance, Perfect Cut has not been seen since, and no murders featuring her utter depravity have ever been reported. There is an ever-growing bounty on her head, dead or alive. And the last that this humble historian heard, it has grown to 500,000 bits for bringing her to justice while still alive. Later on, when Miss Aran did come back and take out Perfect Cut, it brought her in alive. Samus is kind of awesome like that. Wildheart was captured soon after the siege and was sentenced to public service, being made to assist farmers in the growing surpluses of food for the recovery of Equestria. Though his abnormal powers left him along with Nightmare Moon's defeat, the stallion had quite the green hoof, as it were. As it turned out, his coat and mane's colors were due to dyeing. His natural colors were a brown coat matching the bark of an average oak tree. Troubleshoes, is that you? But a fiery shade of green for his mane. Oh. Despite his criminal reputation, many suitors, both Stallion and Mare, courted him, and all were turned away, as though Wildheart had not much interest in romantic or even scandalous relationships.
I can't answer, I guess why.
Adagia, Sonata, and Aria were adopted. I told you I wasn't going to stop with the siren's gags. Officially, by Fluttershy before she left to find her famous village. However, Adagia left kindness respite as she grew into a mare, and became a composer for the royal symphony. Her song, Welcome to the Show, and Let's Have a Battle of the Bands, were both awesome, achieving great fame as a writer of musical scores. Her past was kept a closely guarded secret her entire life, and was not released until after her death, though her relationship to Nightmare Moon brought some small shame to her image among the nobility. It should be said that her music is still quite popular, and valued throughout Equestria. Sadly, however, her music has never caught on in other nations. Her cover of I'm Just a Pony is something to behold. The Dragon Spike, who had served Nightmare Moon as her greatest knight, was taken back into the royal family with little fanfare. However, one day, he took his leave of Canterlot after receiving a letter from Picamina, taking with him a great deal of ponies still showing lines of loyalty to Nightmare Moon, including the original Wonderbolts. This was marked especially odd, as the Wonderbolts were tried in court for treason, and found innocent on account of coercion into service. The borders were watched closely for this army, and yet despite the group's size, it was never seen to cross any of Equestria's edges, and simply vanishing as if into thin air. The Rangers were reprimanded for this failure, and their commander could only offer an emphatic shrug as to how a force could escape. After their inspection, it was shown that not even a single Ranger was missing, and so they were cleared of suspicion. Aragorn had trained these Rangers well. As for Nightmare Moon herself, the elements of harmony claimed that she had escaped them and fled to parts unknown. Strangely, Applejack was conspicuously absent from this debriefing because of feather flu. When questioned on how an Earth pony might have contracted a disease that only affects Pegasi, Rarity was quoted as saying,
Don't worry about the details, dear. Will we lie to you, princess?
When pressed, she mumbled under her breath about one of Applejack's parents being possibly a Pegasus. Records showed that the elements of Odyssey's parents were indeed both Earth ponies, so unfortunately, the fate of Nightmare Moon will perhaps forever be unknown. Now for the explanation of the Mare Nyx and how she relates to Nightmare Moon. The document ends here, as Daydream Glare simply lost interest in the volume and moved on to his next work, a history of their Royal Highnesses, which was considered quite scandalous, and yet both princesses have a copy in their personal collections. Spike tossed the fruit through the air, and was caught in a haze of blue magic. Hey! Thought you might want something to eat before going out there! Nyx looked down at the fruit and frowned, raising her brow, and her head declared the dragon.
I detest banana, Spike. You know this well.
Spike only snickered in return, and peeked out the window, whistling lowly. He ducked as the fruit sailed past him, even without looking behind.
What? What is it?
You got a big crowd out there, sis, and I mean a big crowd. Sure you're up to this? It's like broad daylight out there. He saw a worried look behind him to the alicorn, as she slowly raised from the dais he had been laying on, in a shrine dedicated to her. It was obulescence he found distasteful, all things considered, but her followers had insisted on at least this.
Well, I was kidding. Well, of course I am.
She hefted a tiara onto her brow, sighing as she adjusted with the help of a mirror.
This is ridiculous. All I did was start a town, far from Equestria, where we could exist peacefully, and they've turned it into a blasted nation!
She faltered, and quickly whipped around to the dragon, who was now the same size as her.
I can't do this, Spike. There's so many of them, counting on me. What should I even say?
She tried to the window, carefully peeking it out to herself.
What do they want me to do? Queen things. I'm not a queen. I sit there! On that thing!
She pointed to the dais with a shaking hoof, then turned to the window, and plucked down on the cushions lining the top of it.
You're right, Spike. It's far too bright. I'll stay here and pout.
Spike rolled his eyes and groaned. I was kidding, Nyx! Get up! They're waiting for you out there. Jeez, you're such a crybaby. The dragon stepped over to her makeshift bed and began trying to pry the alicorn up from it, while she clung for dear life. Seriously! You never should have been worried about it 10 years ago! Ah! He stumbled back as a wing flickered out and knocked him off balance, making it to pass into a bowl filled with water, was flipped over, and of course landed on his head. Ugh. Do we have to do this every single time? He tossed the ball aside, still dripping, and walked in front of her. He put his claws on her cheeks and lifted her head up. Look, those boys out there, they love you, okay? They don't love Queen Nyx or Nightmare Moon. They're here because you're here for them, no matter what. He grinned as Nyx finally stood, taking a deep breath.
Yes, right.
She stepped towards the balcony door, but hesitated a moment, looking back at Spike.
You're sure they don't want me to conquer anything? You said that last time and...
Well, Flicker is crazy, you know that. You probably even forgot he suggested conquering Prance in the first place. Get out there. I'm right behind you. Nyx took a deep breath and opened the door, wincing a bit as the sunlight struck her face, black coat shining in the light. As he walked out into the balcony proper, there rose a cheer from the crowd below, and as Spike had said, its throngs were almost countless. The cry of jubilation cheered her and reminded herself,
these are not my subjects. I'm not their queen. I'm their protector, as the other me said.
She let out that breath and smiled, another cheer coming up at that, as he stepped out fully, letting the sunlight strike the dark blue shield that was her cutie mark. Nyx raised a hoof to silence the cheer, and looked down at all the ponies. She made it clear the balcony was higher only because she needed to be able to see her here on this annual gathering. When they all quieted down, and greeted them to begin her address.
My faithful friends! Thank you all for coming.
The end.
This story? Gotta admit, it's good. Not terrific, and not in the same quality as some of the other fics we've had on here. But still good. I do have some small complaints, namely in plot and character. In terms of characters, while I do love a good villain matchup with each of the main six, so that way each main six member could have a fight with their own opposite, I kind of am a fan of doing it myself in several of my stories, as it allows us to see each character's individual strengths and
abilities, and also gives us a chance to see how a character moves and what a character could do best. I felt like the villains were underdeveloped. My favorite of the generals was Spitfire, as she had the most development, most character, and most reasons as to why. Everybody else was just there. It was like, "Hi, I'm there, Fletcher. Pleased to meet you, Spike. I'm here too. Remember, I became a knight. Doodles." Heck, some of the others didn't even get a chance to show off. Wildheart was interesting for what he could be, but then after one or two chapters, he disappeared. Who was he? Why did he have such an antagonistic view on Applejack so much? How did Nyx turn him into a walking forest? Perfect Cut. I would love to know more about her. Heck, Adagia, for all my jokes about her being a siren, I would have loved to have known how Nyx came to adopt her. I would have loved for Nyx to show off more scenes with her, to have Nyx talk to her more, give Nyx more of a reason to show off why this girl is her daughter. I would have loved to have seen more of a relationship between Nyx and Adasia that would have mirrored Twilight and Nyx, but it didn't come. And so thus we were left with just this really nice backstory that I would have loved to experience and would have loved to explore. In short, while the villains were creative, I just wish we had more time to see how they matched up with the main six, how they could oppose each one. Heck, I would have also loved more development for Perfect Cut and Wildheart, and maybe even Fletcher a little. And as for the characters themselves, well, when looking at this element of shipping, well, I'm always one for a good ship here and there. Hey, check out some of my favorites lists. You'll see how many ship fics I have. I felt like we were just forced into certain ships, or we were expected to believe some of these. Like, for instance, mainly Applejack and Rainbow Dash. We were expected to believe that these two were always there. They were always in love, and they always had this ship, and they always had this romance going on between the two. And that was supposed to be the tragedy. However, we were just told this. We didn't see any signs of it other than what we were given in the show. So thus, it was kind of hard for us to actually care or to feel for Applejack's feelings for Rainbow Dash. Kind of wish we had more time to see Rainbow Dash mentioning how much they cared for each other, showing off more of this Applejack ship. Now, the Trixie Jack, I didn't mind. It came as a surprise. It came as something unique, but I did kind of like it. It was really nicely done, and I did kind of like it was happening out the scenes, and we did see that these two cared for each other. It's just that the Rainbow Dash and Applejack one, I felt like could have done more, or at least be a all love is unrequited type of thing. Kind of like with Pinky and Twilight. I also got to complain about certain scenes. Well, the fights were good. I'll get more to that later. I do have to complain about a few, like Pinky's with Perfect Cut. I kind of wish Pinky did more rather than just accidentally taking Perfect Cut out. And I kind of wish Trixie did win her fight with Spike, or at least give her a suitable opponent. But as it is, it just felt like Spike beat Trixie and went, I think I'm done here. Doodles! The other fights are good, and those will be talked about later. Also, near the end, I felt like there was this rush to get things done. Like, oh, Nyx and Adasia decide to have fun. Oh, I'm sorry, Adasia's going to start wandering off now and meet up with Fluttershy. Oh, Twilight's angry at Nyx. Then she suddenly has a change of heart. I felt like we were rushing to get to certain plot points, and it was getting too fast. Another small complaint I have is with Rainbow Dash. While at first I was sort of agreeing with the idea that she was ticked off, and it makes sense why she was refusing to help the others because she was mad that she was dragged into another world that wasn't hers, I can't help but think maybe Dash wouldn't do that. Maybe Dash would actually go, okay, you dragged me here, but you're still my friends. I'm a version of my friends, but you're still my friends. Maybe I'm just comparing it to Night Never Ended. The difference there is Night Never Ended was an accident. Here she was pulled away. So I could understand a little bit of her anger, but her anger seemed to dissipate quickly. It was only brought up again when absolutely necessary. Also a minor complaint, but I felt like Child Nyx was just a little out of character in this moment. Mainly in when Twilight disappeared, I feel like Nyx shouldn't have just been running around screaming "Mama" and crying about it. She sort of actually just went, "Mom! Oh no! Okay, I'll just run home or run to Rarity." That was actually okay. The rest, like I said, I liked it. One scene in particular I liked was the coming back to trying to use the elements. In that the main six had a quick lesson in that you couldn't use the elements when you were not friends. That you needed to be together. No harmony equals no magic. And I love how they showed off the main six realizing this through a slow realization. And that it was going to take more than just a, let's do this! To actually use it, or just a, you're my friend now in order to be able to use the elements properly. And I love that it took Fluttershy to point out, hey, this is wrong, let's focus. I also love the fact that we got to see a little bit of the world, what the world was like with Nyx in charge. Of how Nyx did put everything into plan after everything went to crap. The epilogue was also nicely done as it showed how the world slowly changed and demonstrated that the life went on. I also love the end fights, albeit even Nyx didn't feel too anticlimactic, as this was Kid Nyx reminding adult Nyx that there is more to her than Nightmare Moon. I love Fluttershy's fight with Adagio, where we see the strength of kindness, being able to hold and cuddle a little kid like this. I loved Applejack's fight with Wildheart. And Rainbow Dash's fight with Spitfire is one of my favorites. And Rarity, well, I have this thing for Rarity and archery. Maybe it's just that I love watching her take up a beautiful art form. I just love her using weapons as an art, like fencing or archery. Also, I do like that some of the characters actually managed to stay in character, and the flashbacks to Night Never Ended were really nice. So yeah, and I also did love Nyx as a character as we see a lot of her emotions going through. Even though I wish we could have gotten more, but still, it was kind of nice. All in all, this was a pretty fun fic, and I'm glad to have read it. Tomorrow, however, we're going to take a little time to look at the Luniverse. Take time? Ahem. Next time on the Luniverse. It's been almost 300 years since I banished my sister. Since I have just removed Corona as a threat. And I am alone. What do you mean? You're not alone at all. What? Who are you? Does he know who I am? I'm Celestia. Next time on Tales of the Luniverse. A destined meaning. See you there.